Hey guys, Missing Pixel here, back with another Davilex Overflow video. Chances are, if you're a Davilex fan, you've played all of the London Racer games, and maybe even the offshoots like Holiday Racer or Europe Racer, and even the regional titles like A2 Racer. But I bet not many of you played these. These are Java games based on the Davilex franchise, and I can't wait to show you guys these games. So without further ado, let's get into it. There are 3 titles that I've been able to find: London Racer Police Madness, Autobahn Raser World Challenge, and 3D Autobahn Raser World Challenge. All of these titles were created by a German company called Living Mobile. Finding anything about them has proved to be near impossible, and all I know is that they got bought out by Disney in 2005 and became a Disney studio in 2007. Not only is that funny to think about, but also it's not the first Disney link, as the code for London Racer Destruction Madness was reused for Novodrome, which was published by Disney. Let's start with what I believe to be the newest game, and the most impressive graphically, that is 3D Autobahn Raser World Challenge, released in 2006. The story is this: welcome to a crazy race which takes place in the most interesting countries. No rules, no niceties, just survive and be the first one in the finish. Okay, not much of a story, but simple and to the point. The countries we race in are as follows: Great Britain, Austria, Spain, France, Italy, Croatia, Germany, Norway, Czech Republic and Russia. Quite a lot of variety in the countries. Imagine if we got to drive out Czechia, Russia or Croatia in London Racer. That being said, these are mainly just names and really have nothing to do with the environment. I mean, when I think of Germany and the UK, I don't think of massive brown mountains. I mean, in terms of the UK, sure there are some roads towards Lake District that look like this, but it certainly just feels like the developers took some creative liberties with the names. When we start the tournament, we have 3 cars to choose from, all of which have different properties. We can also change their colour. Just like London Racer 2, US Racer and regional titles, you have the ability to spend money after each race to upgrade the vehicle. And just like those games, we have money that you are able to collect during the race, as well as repair and nitro boost. And here is the game. You have to admit, graphically it's pretty impressive for 2006. It reminds me of a Nintendo DS game, just with a lower render distance. We always start last. We have to catch up to the 3 cars that are ahead. This is different to London Racer, where all cars start at the same position. The strategy for this game is to use your boost whenever possible, and do not crash. This game has some of the worst physics I've ever seen. If you hit anything, your speed essentially gets reduced to 0, and makes catching up really difficult. And you need to not come last, because you will lose the tournament. This certainly adds a challenge to the game, with you having to make sure that you avoid vehicles in your way, but at the same time, sometimes the roads are so small that it's unavoidable. Likewise, if you go off course, you lose all your speed instantly as well, so you have to be careful at what angle you jump. There is a funny disconnect between what speed the game claims you are driving at versus how it actually feels. It feels like we're driving around 80 to 100 km per hour, not 200 plus. However, this is actually a bit of a praise. You see, to understand the issue, let's quickly switch to Gameloft's first game in the Asphalt franchise, and specifically the 3D version. You see, the cars are fast and the gameplay is chaotic, and when the game is hardlocked to a frame rate somewhere between 10 and 15 FPS, and you having to use a number pad as the controller, it makes the game extremely difficult to play. With the latest series, they did the same as Autobahn Raser, claiming that you are driving extremely quickly, while the gameplay is actually rather slow. This is a much better gameplay choice with the limitations you have on a mid-2000s feature phone. The drivers that you are up against are Aisha, Frankie and Eric. You would think that the developers could have at least grabbed some names from London Racer 2 or Autobahn Raser 4, but nope, original names here. We also get points for aforementioned jumps, overtaking, high speed, etc. At the end of the tournament, you get your final score so you can compare against your friends and tell them how much better you are, if for some reason you knew another soul that had this game. What else is there to say about this one? You've got barriers and cones on the road to slow you down, and likewise there are oil spills on the floor. The AI is more than happy to clip through these, giving them an advantage, and they don't tend to make mistakes at all, and in fact they're impossible to run off the course, as when you touch them, they don't move at all, and instead you lose all your momentum. The handling is for the most part responsive, but the cars don't actually feel like cars in a way I can't explain. They feel stuck to the floor, and there is this instant response between you pressing the key and the car moving in a linear fashion. Unfortunately, did not finish the game, as after the first 10 minutes I thought the gameplay got extremely repetitive, as there is not much variety in locations. You have all these locations, but they're in name only, as they are the exact same tracks, and no track has any identifiable landmark. Furthermore, the game's useless physics make it unfortunately an infuriating experience. The game is difficult purely because of the incompetence of the developers making a 3D game, so this is a good way to segue to the 2D version of the game. Now, there are at least 2 different versions of this game that I found, so I will touch on both. This is the first version of World Challenge that I've played. The first change here is that the cars reflect what we see in World Challenge. We have a Golf, a Porsche 911 and a Rover. Once again, each car has its own strengths, and as you can see, we finally get some variation in tracks. The first map here is Paris, and it actually has a recognizable landmark. It's actually Paris. There's a lot to like here. The pixel art is of a very high quality, and the road looks realistic with the way it's divot, and the skybox with the different cities looks great for how small resolution we are talking about here. The gameplay is much faster than that of 3D Autobahn Raser, but the gameplay is ultimately the same. We still have barriers on the road, oil spills that slow you down, and money, nitro and repair to collect. But the AI isn't perfect and is likely to make mistakes, and crashing into them does not slow down the gameplay to a crawl. We also have police, like a real London Racer game. You have to evade them and you get a huge point bonus when we do so. However, if you fail to evade them, you will lose points instead. The gameplay is your standard asphalt/outrun affair, but that's not negative. While it's not the most original of concepts, it's still really fun to play. It can be quite difficult too. Don't expect to win every race the first time. Just like the 3D game, you do need to boost your nitro whenever possible, and the great thing here is that you get a lot of nitro. The car also has a damage model. You can see the window get smashed in and the bumper get damaged. It's a great visual indicator that you need to pick up more repair tokens. Furthermore, upgrades are visual too. You can see that the Porsche gains a spoiler when I upgrade it. In terms of tracks that you get, there is Paris, Barcelona, Helsinki, Las Vegas and London, and you have to race through these tracks twice. Now let me move on to the second version of the game. I believe that this is an earlier version of the game, as the UI is more basic and doesn't fit with the style of the previous two games. Even the menu seems a bit more basic. This game may be suited for even smaller resolutions than the previous game, as the skybox is nowhere near as detailed as the previous game. You also don't get as many features of the previous version. You can't pick which car you want, and collecting the euros feels pointless as you don't have the ability to upgrade your car. The maps and gameplay are identical however, except for the fact you don't have to play through the maps twice, which means it only takes about 10 minutes to beat the game. So here is the congratulations screen. So I guess the final thing to touch on is the god-awful MIDI loops from each game. Have a listen. So that's the Autobahn Raser World Challenge games on Java. While I don't recommend you playing through the 3D version for any reason other than curiosity, I on the other hand think that 2D games are quite a lot of fun to play, and I recommend checking them out. Now, I have unfortunately run out of time in this video to take a look at the other game, London Racer Police Madness, so make sure you stay subscribed as I'll go ahead and look at the other game next. Also, while I have your attention, I have uploaded some Davilex game intros upscaled 1080p over on the Extras channel. I will link the playlist in the card above. If you want to play these games in the meantime, the best way to do so is with an Android phone and J2ME loader, as not only do you get settings to improve compatibility, but the app is much less crash prone compared to the PC equivalent, since Android apps run on Java after all. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you back in part 2.